Hey guys, I just got finished editing the interview that I did with Ben, the founder of PocketHost. For those of you who don't know, Ben has been working on PocketHost for the last 5 years. He's a brilliant guy, and there's a lot of interesting conversations to be had around the future of development, and particularly how PocketHost and Pocketbase factor into that. So I hope this is really interesting and really informative to you guys. It's the first interview style video that I've done, and I'd really appreciate your feedback. So, yeah, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy.
People started calling me Cap online because in Discord I'm Captain. It, it's in Leet speak, but it says Hocket Post. So I'm Captain Hocket Post, and people started calling me Cap. But I go by Ben,
I
Cap,
love that.
Captain Hocket
Yeah.
Post, whatever.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how Pocket Host got started. So I didn't want to keep setting up Pocket Host every time I did a weekend project or something like that. So sorry, I didn't want to keep setting up Pocket Base. I get these mixed
Mm.
up. I'm going to keep doing that. I didn't want to keep setting
Yeah.
up Pocket Base and deploying it. So I came up with this little script, just Node.js server called Pocket Host that basically you could give it a subdomain and it would just spin up a Pocket-based instance on that subdomain and sit there and answer it. And then I thought, well, I'll open source it because I like to do that kind of stuff. So I open sourced it and then I posted it in Ghani's discussion forum, just, hey, if anybody wants to try it. And the thing immediately crashed because so many people jumped on to try it. And the very first version of it, it didn't shut down any of the Pocket-based instances ever. They just kept spawning on the server. And eventually the server just ran out of memory and the whole thing crashed. And so then I had to go back and, okay, well, so what do I do? Like, not people are coming in, they're hitting it once and then they're leaving and their Pocket-based instance is staying there forever. So I decided, well, maybe there's a way I can like write this HTTP proxy that somehow counts the number of open connections. And when that hits 0 after some amount of idle period, it'll shut down that instance of Pocketbase. Um, and that was kind of the beginning of like making it actually scale enough that that other people could use it, because I didn't know if anybody was. I just knew that I wanted it, because I had used Superbase and or Supabase and Firebase. I don't know. I've used all kinds of backends, and I think I was on Fireship. That's how I found out about Pocketbase. The
Yeah. Me too.
Fireship guy mentioned it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so I thought, well, this is kind of cool because it's got some real-time stuff. It's got authentication built in. It's got, you know, API security. Like, it sounds like it has a lot of the basics of a back end that I would want. I was not at the time and still am not personally super excited about extending it in Golang. That I'm not much of a Go programmer. I mean, I can do it, but extending it and having to recompile and redeploy it, that sounds painful to me. So I don't get into that part.
Mm.
And so Pocket Host was out there running. And then the next thing I thought of was like, well, I need a scripting engine for this thing. I need a JavaScript engine of some kind. And I started trying to get into it, and I went down the same road Ghani went down, with Goja and everything. But Ghani is way more familiar with Go than I am. So he ended up beating me to it, by putting that JSVM engine in Pocketbase. And to me, that's when things really took off. It was like, okay, now it's possible this thing is now scriptable, right? So now I don't need a separate Node.js backend, which is why I just wrote a recent article that I posted on PocketHost about how I say that putting Pocketbase behind a different server like Node.js is now an anti-pattern, because you can do all your JS programming right there in the Pocketbase JSVM engine. Um,
Mm.
so anyway, this was all kind of evolving at the same time, and I just kept improving Pocket Host at the same time. Ghani was improving Pocketbase, and they were just kind of, growing up and up and up. And now there are like 10,000 users on the thing, And in fact, I'm going to try to pull up the stats while we're talking here. So like, as of this moment right now, if I go into stats, there are just about 10,000 subscribers total. And in the last 7 days, 100 new users were picked up. There are almost 13,000 instances of PocketBase. In the last hour, 205 unique instances were launched or running. And in the last day, it was 839 unique instances. In the last 7 days, it was 1,600 unique instances. So that's kind of interesting. Like in the last day, 800 uniques, and in the last week, 1,600 uniques. And then in the last 30 days, there were 3,500 uniques. So of those 12,700 instances, 3,500 of them launched at least one time in the last 30 days. That's what that says. But I kind of look at more of just like the hourly stats. Those are kind of interesting to me. Like, in this last hour, 200 different instances have launched and been running. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, how are you handling that sort of scale? Because that's crazy to me. Because people always talk, when people talk about Pocketbase, they talk about scalability. Like, how has it been for you and your journey, like, to actually get to that stage?
It's actually really, really, really stupid easy. I have a DigitalOcean server, a single server running in San Francisco. It's like it has 8 cores and 32 gigs of RAM. And then I just keep expanding the storage volume, just as people keep uploading more stuff. But that process, or that server is like plenty big for what people are doing. Like, I have a private channel on Discord that tells me at any given time, like how many instances are running, how many, so like right now it says CPU usage is at 31%. There's 24 gigs of free RAM, like available RAM still right now on the system. There are 25 containers currently running, and this is like a minute by minute stat that it posts. So like there are 25 instances running right now on a 32 gig RAM server, and there's still 24 gigs left. Like, Pocketbase is incredibly efficient, and Docker doesn't add much overhead either. So it's still running just on one server.
Yeah, so run me through, like, because I'm not as familiar with how the architecture works in terms of where you're actually deploying these instances and how these instances are deployed. Do they automatically shut down? So I assume you're running like Docker on this VM, and then these containers that you're spinning up, they run the instances when calls are made to the instances. Is that?
Yeah. So I can kind of walk you through that. So if you go to the PocketHost GitHub repo, you're going to see it's all written in TypeScript. So this is a Node.js application. It's got an Express server, Express.js, running out front. The first Express.js server is a firewall. It handles are you even like remotely authorized to be talking to me? And that has to do also with Cloudflare, because we have Cloudflare out in front of that. So Cloudflare is actually that's actually the IP that every user hits first. They hit Cloudflare. If it passes all Cloudflare's bot protection and all that kind of stuff, it'll get through to my personal firewall. That personal firewall will make sure the request actually came from an authorized Cloudflare IP address. So nobody can hit it unless they come through Cloudflare. So that's my first line of security right there. It won't even like answer the request. Then depending on where it's going, if it's a request that goes to what I call the mothership, that's a single instance of Pocketbase that I'm running that holds all the knowledge for all the instances that are, like, that's when I just was telling you those stats. I was going into my Pocketbase database of the mothership, And
Yeah.
I was reading you the stats right off of there. It's just like it's a little SQLite view that I created that tells me,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So it'll route all that traffic that way. If it's anything else, if it's anything .pockethost.io, or if it's any CNAME that we know about, so any custom domain name, then it's going to go through to what what we call the edge server. And the edge server is the part that's going to eventually scale out. We're doing this big lifetime Flounders round deal right now,
I
and
know, I
what I'm
bought that.
thank you, yeah. What I'm hoping is that we can like raise some funds. I like to have enough funds that I know I can run the server for 5 years without any more income, right? So there's this 5-year runway, because that way I can tell people like, hey, if nothing else happens with this service, it'll just sit there and run for 5 years, and then it'll run out of money and get shut down.
Yeah.
So when I've got that 5-year, and we're almost there, we have to sell, I don't know, 30 more flounders or something like that, but we'll have enough to open up. I think it's going to be probably somewhere in Europe. It's they really, a lot of users want a second region out there. So I have this thing called the Edge server, which lives on the edge, which currently is only San Francisco, but when we get one in Europe, there will be an Edge server in Europe as well. So it goes through Cloudflare, it hits one of the edge servers, whichever one is closest, and then the edge server talks to the mothership and says like, okay, I have whatever pockethost.com. Is this a valid instance? Is it suspended? Is the user account valid? It goes through all of that stuff, and once it figures out all of that, it approves the request and it sends it through to ultimately what's like a Docker container launcher. There's a piece of code that will launch a Docker container, but only if that container hasn't already been launched. So there was like some really messy asynchronous code that I just rewrote all of it like in the last couple of weeks, and the reliability is like so much better. Because sometimes it was missing a container launcher. It would get into these race conditions where it's like, if the Pocketbase instance is idle and it's shutting down just as a new request comes in, sometimes it would get into some kind of cycle where it wouldn't know how to relaunch the thing. So I fixed all that. So what it does is if the container's already running, it forwards the request through, and it keeps track of whether that request is still open or not. So you have an open request count. So that the Express server is doing that. It's and if you look in the PocketHost code, you'll see, but there's like deep in the Express server request and response objects, you can listen for these connection events and disconnect events and keep track of how many connections are open. So once that connection count drops to 0, then it waits a period of time. I think right now it's 5 seconds. I've experimented with up to a minute of idle time. It doesn't really seem to matter. Like 5 seconds seems to be enough. If nothing new comes in 5 seconds, we shut down that instance gracefully. So no data's lost or anything like that. It's just we just send a signal to just like if you hit Control-C from the command line, it'll exit that Pocketbase instance, shut everything down, clear out all the Docker container memory and everything, and go back to waiting for another request. So Node.js is handling all of this with massive concurrency. We have just like thousands and thousands of requests coming in per minute. For a while it was per second, because this guy in Russia made a bot that went out of control, and it was sending millions of requests per minute to PocketHost. And I can't remember how I figured it out. I think I was in Cloudflare looking at the stats, and that's when I had to put the rate limiting in place, because I couldn't get a hold of this guy, and his bot was just like,
Going
spamming
crazy.
me. Yeah. And so I had to put this rate limit thing in place, which bugs some people because they're, but actually I think it's a good thing, because it points out, like, if somebody's doing a programming pattern that isn't scalable or sustainable, even in development, they'll hit that rate limit and they'll come into Discord and say like, hey, what's going on? How come my thing's not, and then we can have that conversation of like, you shouldn't be sending that many requests anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I had to implement rate limiting, and I don't know, all this stuff kind of just grew up one problem at a time,
Yeah.
as things happened. And I try to keep it really focused on just what I need it to do. Like I hear what other people are asking for. And if enough people kind of want the same thing, then I feel like I've got some clarity to actually add some code, right? But for the most part, I'll I'll add code to PocketHost, I'll add a feature, and then I'll go back to building my apps until I hit another wall, and then I'll be like,
Mm.
okay, crap, okay, back into PocketHost, add more features. All right, now back into my app, and
Yeah.
that's how all these projects around PocketHost have kind of emerged is through like direct need, and it seems to be helping other people as well. So that's I mean, that's good, but like some people go to the website and they think it's like a big company, and they think that because one of our users, I don't even know if I know what his real name is, but he's Brewhouse on Discord.
Yeah.
He revamped the whole front end and he made the landing page and everything, and it just to me it looks like, I mean, it's far beyond my abilities as far as UX and graphic design and everything. I think it looks
It
really
looks so
cool.
good. Yeah, it's
Right.
really
I
good.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like, you know, he just you should have seen it before. I mean, it was bad. And
Yeah.
uh when when he came along, he's like, "Hey man, can I fix this up for you? Like I really like your service, but this just doesn't people aren't going to know how cool your service is with the way it looks right now." And
Yeah.
so, yeah, he went through and overhauled everything, and I'm super grateful for people like him, and other people have come in with like
Wow.
small bug fixes and things, and
Yeah.
but he did like a major effort that I think really does give us like a professional feel, almost too professional though, because people don't they think that it's like a company, and it's like no, it's an open source project, and it's one dude, and I
Yeah.
just kind of like build what I want, and if it works for you, hop on. But like there's no, I don't even have like a service level agreement, or like uptime, or any of those hosting metrics. I'm like I'm like actively trying to avoid those because um, I don't want it to. I don't want to run a hosting company. Um,
No.
I just want to run something that is super cool for developers and lets them, create their proofs of concept and launch. And we do have people. We have people. Some guy's app just went viral on PocketHost, and I
Really?
don't know if I don't know if you saw him in Discord or not, but he came in there, and he's not even like a paid guy. He's just he signed up
Just a
for a
free
free
user.
Pocket hosting. Yeah, and he came into PocketHost or into Discord, and he was like, "Oh, I'm in big trouble, man. My app went viral, and it's like so slow, and I have to move it. I have to move it and start self-hosting it because I need like a bigger server and stuff." And I said, I don't think it's the server, man, because we're on an 8-core 32 gig server.
Yeah.
If that's not doing it for you, like there's some other problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I think part of the benefit that people get from PocketHost is actually in the Discord channel, because I'm hanging out in there, and they come with whatever their technical problems are. And I would say like a good 80% of the time, the the problem is a few steps back from where
Yeah.
they are, right?
Yeah.
But they're like super focused on like, oh, this thing is going wrong and I got to fix it. And it's like, wait a minute, why are you there in the first place? Hang on, like let's step back and figure this out. So
Yeah.
that's what I did with him. We ended up just like DMing for a while, because I was curious too, like if you're saying PocketHost is slow, like those are fighting words, I'll
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
get in there and
Yeah.
figure out what's going
Don't
on.
at me.
Well,
Yeah.
but it's cool because none of my apps have gone viral. So it's like I want to know, like how does PocketHost handle if an app goes viral? Like that's good information just for me too. So
Mm.
it turned out that he had so many users hitting it at once, like thousands of users hitting it all simultaneously, that the real-time feature of Pocketbase was getting saturated. And this is actually a conversation I have to have with Gani. So don't quote me on the official answer because I haven't talked to him yet. But it looked to me like we were seeing a pattern where we'd restart his Pocketbase server, everything would be fine for a while, but then as more users made those real-time connections, it got slower and slower and slower. Now, meantime, the rest of PocketHost is working fine because I'm looking at the logs, I'm looking at everybody else's instances, everything's super snappy, super responsive, but this one guy's instance is dragging, and I don't even have to reset the Docker container. All I have to do is change one of his Pocketbase.js hooks because it will detect that file change, and it'll restart the server internally without the executable even exiting. So even just restarting itself internally cleared up the problem. So I am pretty convinced that there is some kind of issue with, tons of real-time connections in Pocketbase, but I haven't talked to Gani about it. He probably has a really straightforward answer to it. But that's what ended up being the guy's problem, was just so many people were connecting and making these real-time connections that it was just getting saturated.
Because I think that a lot of people are worried about, like, if their app does actually sort of scale up, whether they're going to be able to like support themselves using Pocketbase. And I know that there has been some issues for me, even as in my own builds using SSE, like not necessarily on Pocketbase's side, but there's issues with SSE in Android for Expo, for instance. Like it won't connect on certain devices, and I think that this has been an issue which I've seen like a lot of people talking about online, like with the issue and how that was resolved for this guy's app going viral. Doing a simple restart of the hooks file was able to solve that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just because it dumped all the connections and restarted itself, and then once all the connections reconnected, it was back to being slow. So I think there's probably something going. It may even be fixed in the 23 version, because he was running 22. We all are. I haven't released 23 because the API is so different that I have to rewrite some stuff in PocketHost. And when we talk about PocketPages, we can talk a little bit about like building a compatibility layer between the two, because I sort of started to do that so that something can run on 22 and 23. Like you can run the same PocketPages. We'll save that for PocketPages.
I want to get into that, but I wanted to ask you around like the JSVM side of things, because I've done a lot of building in Go, and I've tried to go down that route. And one of the things that you said at the start was like, don't know, you weren't keen on going down that Go route. You wanted to stick in JS, and seeing like how you built out PocketHost, like how has that been? Because using Goja, I found it really restrictive for being able to use like node packages like I normally would. Like how?
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no other answer.
No, and it's not Donnie's fault either, by the way. It's just Goja is not a Node.js environment, and it's also not a browser environment. So Gani built this whole, JS bridge into his Golang API, and you have all of that. So you have this odd JavaScript environment that it has no async, so that means no promises, no set timeout, no set immediate. There's nothing like that, which means you have to open up a bunch of different threads. So he pools a bunch of different threads of the JSVM engine, because it's single threaded even beyond what Node is. Like at least Node has an event loop where you have async, and you can kind of simulate doing a bunch of stuff at once, like handling a bunch of requests at once. It's not true in the JSVM for Pocketbase. There's no event loop. It just runs straight through, and like if it makes an HTTP call, it just waits there, and that instance of the JSVM is frozen until the call comes back. So it's super old school. It's like PHP used to be, right? Just like no async or anything. But yeah, your chances of getting a node package to work in the JSVM out of the box are I don't even try to run it first. I go look at the code. I like if I want to use a package, I go look at the code and see if it's using any node features, like if it's using file system or process, or even if it's using buffer. Like Goja doesn't have buffer. so
Yeah.
yeah, so this is where people stumble a lot, and I don't blame anybody. But that's why they want to build like a Node.js backend that then talks to Pocketbase, because they're like, well, then this way I can build my Node.js app, and then I can, use Pocketbase more for like the data access. But I'll have all of my business logic, and that's one way to do it. I have gotten away from that. I think I have a way now to build pretty robust server-side apps all in the JSVM. But it even takes like a custom build. Like you have to bundle all of the libraries, all of the packages that you want to use. It like creating a web bundle. Um, Except it's JSVM specific, Pocketbase specific. So yeah, I mean it's a very painful environment right now. I've solved a lot of that for myself by using TypeScript and coming up with a build and bundling system so that I can have like a very organized TypeScript application that then gets all bundled, and then inside each hook, so like router add, or on before whatever, like all those events, all those pocket based events, inside that there's a single require statement that requires my bundle and then calls a specific function in the bundle. So I export all of these hook handlers, and then I require each one. So like each hook that's defined in the JS hooks file requires my library again, like each one separately. If you go look at any of the plugins or whatever that I'm writing, they're all this same way. And I don't know if that's something that Ghani will be able to solve or not. It would be nice to write something that feels more like a Node.js app where you can just import stuff and it works. But right now, everything's got to go through a bundler. So yeah, it's not the easiest environment for sure. But I think the advantages of it are that you can have a single backend server handling everything, and to me that's worthwhile.
Yeah. It's interesting you're talking about like how implementing a rate limit was actually a good thing, because it showed developers how they were sort of messing up it, or that it could be a few steps back that their code's gone wrong. I have a good example of that. I was working on a Next.js app, and had a PocketHost instance set up, hit the rate limit, and I was wondering what's going on here. Oh, maybe it's something with PocketHost, because I'm on this free instance. And then I realized that my instance was like from the server side in Next.js, it was like hitting that instance like over and over and over and over again. So I had to implement some sort of caching in there. And I think that that is something that sort of to segue away from the JSVM discussion. I think that I think that a lot of people are wanting to have some sort of Next.js like experience where they've got all of their server side stuff tied to their front end code.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably like a good segue into your PocketPages stuff. So how are you sort of trying to improve that side of things for the average Pocket-based developer?
Yeah, well, this is where I get really rebellious.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, I like Svelte. I like Svelte Kit. I worked in React a lot before that. I like Svelte
Mm,
even better.
that's
Um,
great.
I don't want to use any of it anymore for my front ends. What I think we can get away with now is a
Mm,
return to old school server side pages. And I'm talking about, back in the days of like PHP, right? Where I mean, they made up the term server side rendering like there was anything different before that. It was always server side render. That's all we had.
yeah.
So, but I don't want to call it SSR because that to me is like that's a conversation about like web components and React components and things like that getting rendered server side, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Mm,
about a genuine server side page where you can just say like echo hello world and it will do that for you, right? if we
yeah.
can if we can get that in Pocketbase, then I think we're on our way to like a killer platform, which I mean, we have it now because that's what Pocket Pages is. So Pocket
Yeah.
Pages, you can just create a file on the server called index.ejs, because instead of like a PHP scripting language, we use JavaScript. So
Mm,
you create just index.ejs. Inside there you can go back and forth between HTML, and you can escape it with whatever scripting you want to do. And
mm,
Pocket Pages will render that super efficiently. It will compile those EJS files to an intermediate version. It'll use Pocketbase's memory cache, in-memory cache, so that it doesn't have to recompile those every time the page is hit. So it's quite efficient, and with that you can create any server-side pages you want. So right there alone, you're back to being able to create like an old school web app, like you used to
mm,
in PHP, but it's backed by Pocketbase, and it's got the whole Pocketbase infrastructure behind it. So user auth, API security, everything else. That I mean, Pocketbase does a ton of stuff, but when I think about it, I think of um, it. It's got user auth, it's got API security, and it's got some sort of like ORM-ish tool where you can query for collections and relations and things like that. You can do
mm,
all of that in the JSVM as well. Like a lot of people don't know that. They they know they can do it client side using the Pocket-based, JS SDK,
mm,
the JS client, where you can query collections, relations. It's got this whole, API that's well documented. But then
yeah.
there's this JSVM, which is not well documented. It's just
No,
like
it's not.
this auto-generated shit. And I say that with love, because I mean I love the whole thing, but like it is not
Yeah.
that's not where the focus is. So you get into this JSVM side, and it's like there's no tutorial for it or anything. There's just
No.
this like auto-generated reference of all the functions you could possibly call. And
Yeah.
of course it makes sense to Ghani because he wrote the thing, and so I understand that. But he hasn't gotten to a point of really trying to I mean, he has some docs for it. I shouldn't say not at all, but like the
Mm,
vast majority of the JSVM is not documented in any sort of like tutorial or organized fashion. It's just an API reference,
yeah.
off in the back. So but inside that API, you can do all those same kinds of queries that you would do client side. So
Mm,
server side, you can do the exact same stuff. You're running right against the metal. Like there's not even a network connection between you and Pocketbase. It's literally running in the same process. Um,
so good.
and it's like, dude, it's going to be killer. It's going to be killer
Yeah.
when it all gets straightened out. So Pocket Pages runs on that and implements its own um, higher level API and architecture. If anybody wants to, they can go to PocketPages.dev and see it. And the new version 10, will be out probably by the time this thing drops. But yeah, it implements its own kind of higher level API that feels much more like what you would find in PHP or some other high level scripting language. So you can create a whole app using Pocket Pages. You don't need any build tools for that at all. You can jettison Svelte, you can jettison React. You could use them if you wanted to, but not like in, I don't know, like I haven't even tried it because I don't want to get back into that. But yeah, you can jettison all of that stuff and go back to a server-side app that you can see. I think one of the huge advantages of PHP, messy as it is, you can start with one file and no build chain, nothing, just one file that you put on the server. You can edit it on the server. It changes immediately, right? You refresh your page, it's like it's there again. And there's something about that level of accessibility that allows you to start from like the simplest concept that you possibly can and build out from there versus sure, if I build a Svelte app, and I have one, the PocketHost dashboard is made in Svelte. It does great. It compiles, it's this whole static generated site that I push up to Cloudflare pages, and it does all the chunking and bundling and all this cool stuff to manage all these assets and give them little fingerprints for cache busting and all this stuff. Like, it does a whole bunch of great stuff, but I miss being able to just stand up an app quickly without any dependencies or any kind of build chain or anything. So that's what inspired Pocket Pages. And I hope it'll catch fire with other people. I'm already starting to build apps on top of PocketBase. So I've got Pocket Host hosting it. Sorry, Pocket Pages. I've got Pocket Host hosting everything. Then I've got Pocket Pages, which is this server-side pages engine running on top of PocketBase. And then I'm starting to build apps on top of that. So many pockets. Yeah, it's Pocket everything. I stole the whole Pocket brand name.
I love it. Yeah, it's good.
But I always ask him first. I say, hey, I'm gonna name something else Pocket something. Is that okay with you? And he so far he's always been like, yeah, that's fine. So he's been pretty cool about it.
Tell me about Garni. Like, have you spoken with him like one-on-one, or have just in the discussions?
Only through email. I suspect English is not his first language. I don't know that for sure, but sometimes it kind of seems like maybe. Some of the phrasing and things like that feel. I don't think he's as frustrated as he sounds sometimes, but also maybe he is. I mean, I think PocketBase kind of surprised him and became this like super popular project, and everybody's asking him questions, and it's like, well, I can sit here all day and answer all these questions and then get nothing done for myself, right? So I'm sure he's like going through that. But we've had a few email exchanges that are pretty much just like what you would read from his replies. I mean, they're no different. They just sometimes they discuss like sensitive information because he watches out for me. Like, if he's going to release a feature that he thinks would create a vulnerability in PocketHost, he knows that like thousands of people would be affected by that. So he'll give me a heads up and say, hey, this next release, you're probably going to want to like. Because like for a while, I wasn't running in Docker containers. There was no reason to, because there were no JS hooks, and I didn't allow custom builds. So there was no reason to run in Docker containers. But then he's like, hey, I'm about to drop this JS hooks feature, and as soon as people have that, if you allow it, they have file system access, right? And so then it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I better go back and like put these in Docker just in case. And I nobody's tried to do anything. Everybody I think so far everybody is just, it's just developers trying to like find that winning concept, and so
Yeah.
I really like that community. But yeah, so we've had like a few email exchanges, but nothing like, we're not we're not beer buddies, although I'd definitely buy him a beer if he ever came out
Me
to Reno,
too.
or if, I don't
He's
even
the
know where he
man.
lives. Yeah,
Me
do you
neither.
know do you know
No,
where he
he's a man of
lives?
mystery, isn't he? He's a man of mystery. I think someone said that he was in India, but like I don't know. But you're right. Like people, I think they misread, or maybe he is genuinely frustrated. Like I know around a lot of the server side rendering stuff, people are like, why is my Pocket host instances not working? Like I should be able to be able to do caching and things like that. And I think all of that comes down to like just the complexity of this server side rendering, static site generation frameworks that we've built as developers. Like a lot of people are getting frustrated by the Svelte kits and the Next.js's because it's too much.
Yeah.
And I guess I also wanted to speak to you on like with Pocket Pages, how do we actually how do we as developers jump in there and still do similar things like cache control and client side rendering when we need to do client side rendering? How have you sort of looked at solving that as well?
Okay, well, if you want to go really retro, um,
Yeah,
grab a library like jQuery, and then you can do whatever client-side stuff you want, right? But
yeah,
there's a reason people moved away from jQuery and moved to these more reactive frameworks. I don't
mm,
I don't know that there's really a case for needing a reactive framework um, in Pocket Pages, but if you did want to do sophisticated client-side stuff, you would need some sort of client-side library. I like Alpine.js. I don't know if you've messed with
mm.
that one at all,
I
but
haven't yet.
oh yeah, you gotta do one of your videos on that. Do
Okay.
okay, here are so three new videos that would be really cool. Alpine.js, then HTMX. HTMX is what I think is gonna really be able to bring us back to that server side page approach. So like,
Yep.
I don't know how much you want to get into HTMX, but it's have you done a video on that already?
No, it's one of those things where a lot of people have like recommended it, and I'm because I have not had enough exposure to the old school way of doing things. Like one of the things I'm doing right now actually is learning PHP and building custom sites in PHP, which is like so weird. It's like going backwards from React, but I'm trying to learn those technologies first before I look into going into looking at improving it, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to. It's kind of like a lot of programmers, I think, who are my age have come in when React was at its height. So I started learning how to code when I was like
Yeah.
19, and I'm 26 now. So I've only been coding for like 7 years, and React was it for me. And so like I come in and I'm like, oh, React is so much fun. It's so easy to build websites. And then all of a sudden, there's like performance stuff which you get asked to do, and then it's like, oh, how do we make stuff more performant? Oh, we've got to go to server-side rendering. Then you start thinking about caching. Then
Yeah.
you start thinking about multiple servers, and it gets so complicated. And so I think for me, I'm so with you on like PHP used to be the technology people used. Why is that? And then you look at like how simple things are in PHP, and then you start to see the holes which are in the JS ecosystem with Next.js and React and all of the big ones, and then people come in with stuff like Svelte and SvelteKit, which are great. Like, but then also Svelte's kind of like with their runes, they're adopting like kind of React patterns, and then I'm like, no, please, no. Like they've got like effect now instead of like, because you've
Yeah.
got use effect in React. It's like, no, no, get that effect word out of here. Like let's just focus on making stuff reactive client side, and like that use effect stuff is that's the bane of my existence as a React developer. So yeah, these are the things I'm thinking about, but I definitely want to try it out. What's the for anyone who's out there, like what's the benefits for Alpine and HTMX?
Okay, so Alpine is something pretty close to React or Svelte, but
Yeah.
you don't have to compile anything. It runs all in the browser, and it's all just plain HTML. All of Alpine is either contained in scripting tags or contained in HTML attributes. So it makes it really lightweight because you know, again, you're escaping from the whole build chain, and it's back to just something that runs right in the web page. So Alpine's
Mm,
good for that. um, where HTMX is killer, I think, is you can build a reactive application that has um, the ability to update specific pieces of the page
mm,
using remote requests and reactivity. So, you know, you hit a submit button, or I mean, there are a bunch of events you can listen for, but let's just take a simple one. You hit a submit button on some form.
mm,
HTMX is going to take that form data, host it back to some endpoint on your server, and then it's expecting your server to return a chunk of HTML to replace either that same form or some other element on the page. So it's expecting
mm,
to get HTML back instead of JSON. And that is the game changer of HTMX. You're getting an HTML conversation going back and forth. So you can take HTMX client side, you can have PocketPages server
mm,
side, PocketPages that know how to render little chunks of HTML, and then HTMX can call specific endpoints in PocketPages. PocketPages will return whatever HTMX needs to, and it updates your application that way. So
mm,
you can start with a plain old uh, PHP style application, right? That just posts the whole page back, refreshes the whole page, does the thing that
mm.
nobody likes to do anymore, all those page refreshes, right? You can build it that
Yeah.
way first, and then you can drop HTMX in strategically where you want to. And this is how, you know, I mean, they used to do it this way anyway, where like they called it Ajax. You'd make an Ajax request back to the
Yeah, I
server, and it
remember
would return.
Ajax.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
HTMX is kind of that idea, but much more integrated with HTML as a concept. It's like an extension to the HTML language. So
Yeah.
you have the simplicity of server side pages again, no build chain, no complicated front end, and you can get started. Again, the beauty of PHP to me is you can get started with one file, one line in one file. You can go live with that.
Mm.
There are super famous, if you know this guy, uh, I think his name's Peter Levels or something like that.
Yeah,
He
I
was
know
on,
Peter Levels. Yeah.
yeah, he was on Lex Friedman a while ago, and he's got a good account on X. But you know, a lot of his most famous apps they're one page apps. And I don't mean single page application. I mean, literally, they are one page of PHP and some jQuery. And, you know, it's hugely successful with that. So
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that technology, it's like in music, man. You know, I walk in, some people have like a lot of gear. They've spent thousands of dollars on gear, you know, and then, but I'll go to a concert and I'll see one guy up on stage, and he's got a water bottle and a guitar, and he is holding the whole crowd just with that, just with a
Yeah.
guitar. And you know, it's
Yeah.
like you don't need all the other stuff is cool, but if you don't have that, if you don't have that essence, I think you can end up going down this road of like more tools, more gear, more, you know, more everything to try to put band-aids on top of the fundamental truth that you haven't really locked in on a concept that works for people.
Yeah.
So that's my like rebel opinion about all of this. I think that you can build it simply, and you can release, you know, even after just a day or two of coding. And if it's something that resonates, people will find it, and they will, you can iterate on it. So I want a framework where I can iterate quickly. And part of iterating quickly means I want to be able to change files on the fly. I do not like having to rebuild, redeploy. It's too slow. I want to be able to jump on the server, change a file, and see it like that. And if you change a JS hook file in PocketBase, PocketBase will reload it right then. Okay, so if you have some kind of SSH connection to your PocketBase server, or I don't care, even FTP, something that can sync quickly, you can have that kind of environment. And then with PocketPages on top of it, now you've got a server-side pages framework that is instantly responsive to changes, and that's what you need. Like, I have fun telling people this. Okay, so PocketHost, I told you it was written in TypeScript. I SSH into the server and I developed that thing live. Okay, so I'll make a change, boom, restart the server. I hate that I have to do that, but restart this, not the VPS, but just restart Node. I have to restart the Node process because Node, well, I mean, it can reload, it can hot reload things, but that's challenging and has a bunch of problems. It's easier just to restart the Node process when you make a change. But that's what it'll do. I'll make a change in my TypeScript file. The process will restart, and I'll go find out if it, is better or if I made a mistake. And I do a lot of changes on PocketHost that way. If I have a major feature, I develop it locally. I try to test it a little bit locally. I put it in a branch. I'll go to the server, I'll switch over to that new branch so that I can switch back if it's really bad, which sometimes happens. But it's all still like live development on the server. I don't have a test environment other than my local server, because PocketHost, a lot of the problems that show up with PocketHost show up only at scale. There's not a way to test if something is failing on my local environment, because it wasn't failing on my local environment. That's how it got out there in the first place. So I need to go test it in the environment where it's showing up. So yeah, I do a lot of like live development right on PocketHost, and I want to be able to do the same thing with the apps that I'm building.
Yeah, it needs to be quick. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to sort of talk about, like, you're fairly active building out PocketHost, and then now we've got PocketPages. What's what are the things that you're doing with PocketHost to build PocketPages rep? Like, how are people using PocketHost already and jumping onto PocketPages?
Okay, so I don't know how many PocketPages users are using PocketHost. PocketPages is still pretty new. I think people are checking it out. They're kind of like messing with it locally. And by the way, I know that Pocketbase is growing up because the types of questions that I'm getting on the Discord channel are more sophisticated questions. They're questions that you would only hit when you've gotten to a certain stage of like app development or a certain stage of success. And so I can tell that the ecosystem is growing up, but PocketPages is still pretty young. So I'm not getting, most of the questions I get about PocketPages are just like, hey, I tried to install it and it won't do anything. Like it's at that level. So I don't know how much overlap there is there yet, but I can tell you that trying to build and use PocketPages has pointed out to me pain points in using PocketHost for that purpose, right? So like, for example, I realized that I had no good way to edit my files. I mean, PocketHost lets you have an FTP connection. That's all you get. I can't give people SSH because I don't. Well, part of it
The
is
security
I am not.
overlaps, right?
Giving people SSH access is I would only realistically be able to give them SSH access inside a Docker container that that had only their own files. Giving them SSH access into anything else would, potentially create security issues with, like breaking into root, and it's just it would be a mess. So
Yeah.
I don't. So FTP is what we have for now.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so my first thing was, let me go find some kind of code editor that can connect directly to FTP and let me edit the files. And every time I hit save, it saves it back to, to PocketHost. Like, that would be cool. I really could not find a VS Code extension that did that. And so what I ended up with, is it still okay? I was playing with my thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can still hear me? Okay.
Yeah. I can still hear you.
Yeah, so I ended up with like, okay, well, I'll edit the files locally, and then I'll run a little, PocketPages dev command line tool that will watch all the local files and mirror any changes over to PocketHost, and it'll do it instantly. And then as soon as I did that, I realized, like, well, there are some shortcomings with PocketHost's FTP access. For instance, I want to be able to log into FTP, but I don't want my password stored in plain text on my machine. So how do I do that? And so I had to like make some modifications to PocketHost so that you can send it and like a JWT authentication token as as login credentials to the FTP server, and it will accept those and log you in that way. So like little changes like that. And this is how PocketHost grew up, is like, I try to do something and then I hit a problem and I'm like, oh shit, that sucks. Okay, well, let me go like fix that. So it's this kind of back and forth thing where, like, it's been 3 weeks since I've done anything on PocketPages because it sent me into this rabbit hole, of PocketHost upgrades. And then we had the whole Black Friday flounders thing that's going on,
Yeah.
which I don't know how that's gonna turn. I doubt we're gonna sell 1,000 copies instantly or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's already sold. Like, basically everybody who was asking for one has one at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've sent out several email blasts to like all 10,000 users, and I just think anybody who really wanted one has one. So it would be new people coming into the community or hearing about it somehow. That's where those other 900 copies are going to get sold. So who knows how long that'll take? But something viral could happen. It could happen. Pocketbase, goes even more viral than it has, and people pick up PocketHost. But in the meantime, I'll work on PocketPages. I'll find some shortcoming in PocketHost. I'll fix that. I'll go back to PocketPages, fix whatever I was fixing in PocketPages. Then I'll jump back into the app I was trying to build on PocketPages, and I'll mess with that app more. And sometimes deploying that leads to some PocketHost problems that I need to work out. So it's like there's this stack, right? And I keep trying to claw my way up to the top of the stack, but I keep sliding back down, and it all sort of ends with PocketHost at the bottom. So lately, PocketHost has been getting the most love, but I'm an app programmer at heart. Like, I want to make something cool that just regular people use, like, not developers. Developers are cool too, but I don't know, there's something about like breaking out of the developer community into, something that just humanity feels is valuable. There's something validating about that. And so I keep trying to do that. And that's how this whole thing started in the first place. I was building this drum circle. It was like a global drum circle game, and I had it working on Firebase. And then I was like, well, I wonder if Supabase would be better. So I refactored it into a provider interface for the backend so that I could have a Supabase backend to compare to the Firebase backend. And then freaking PocketBase came out right then. And so I was like, well, I got to try a Pocket-based backend for my drum circle game. And
Yeah.
that's when I got into the whole deployment problem, because with Supabase and Firebase, they all have answers for deployment, but Pocketbase didn't. So then I thought, well, let me do this little PocketHost side project before I get back to my drum circle game. So I've been trying to get back to my drum circle game for now it's almost 4 years now that I've been trying to get back to this drum circle game.
Wow, it's still not done.
Haven't touched it. So yeah, you know, but that's the mission. I'm trying to get back to what I started. And
Yeah, that's one hell of a side quest.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think that definitely deployment was one of the things. My story is pretty similar to yours. Like I was trying to get away from Supabase, but I think one of the things which I didn't like about Supabase was just how hard it was to self-host in general. Because it's not really open source when you want to actually host everything yourself. You're not able to do even half the stuff, and the documentation's not there. Which for PocketBase, that's I think the main reason why people move to it. One of the things that I want, yeah, definitely, like being able to own every part of it. One of the things I wanted to ask you was around the plugin system. Like, so you've been doing some stuff for PocketPages. You've got PocketHost, but you've also got this new plugin system that you're working on and developing, which is something I know a lot of people are interested in building, because I've seen on Reddit, like, people are like, why don't we, you know, pull all our resources and, you know, jump into it and develop this plugin system. So talk a little bit about Pocadex, which is your Pocadex.
Yeah, so that's it's a little bit of a play on Pokemon and Pocketbase, and kind of, you know, and the WordPress codex. You know, WordPress has a great plugin ecosystem, and I think a lot of people. So people are coming to Pocketbase, and they're looking for some familiar patterns, right? That's why they come, and they're like, well, I'm using Next.js, and I want to like somehow plug Pocketbase into my Next.js app, right? Or I'm coming from WordPress, and I like the sound of Pocketbase, but like, where are all my plugins? So you know, I think people are looking for familiar patterns. Some of them fit, some of them don't. I think running double backends is an anti-pattern, so I think people should get away from that. But in the case of a plugin community, that's why I created Pocadex. So the idea of Pocadex is you install Pocketbase, and then you install as an npm module, like just a node package. You install Pocadex, and Pocadex will extend the Pocketbase command line with a new subcommand, px or Pocadex. I can't remember what I called it, but the idea there is that you can list, install, remove plugins quickly and easily, and in a way that is cooperative with the Pocketbase migration system. That's a big part of what Pocadex solves, because when you install a plugin, it may need to install some tables of its own. Not every plugin does, but it may need to create its own collections and things like that. But then Pocadex will keep track of which version of the plugin you're running. If you upgrade the plugin, it can run some upgrade code. So, you know, it has sort of its own migration management system inside Pocadex, that when you uninstall the plugins, they know how to uninstall their own migrations, but it doesn't affect the core Pocketbase migrations that you yourself would make by going into the admin and, you know, changing collections or doing whatever. So that's that, and version management, and, you know, enabling, disabling plugins, things like that. That's what Pocadex is designed to manage. So it's still a pretty obscure project. There aren't I mean, that's aside from a couple plugins I've made that nobody's, building for it yet. But that could change because, some of the apps I'm working on, like here's another Pocket project. I'm
Yeah.
working on one called Pocket Press, which is kind of a blogging CMS WordPressy type of platform where, I don't know, the idea is you can create pages and posts and just kind of have sort of like a basic homepage for yourself, right? So say you want to create your own just personal website. You can do that powered by PocketBase, powered by Pocket Press. And Pocket Press is a Pocadex plugin, where you can say install Pocket Press, uninstall Pocket Press, upgrade Pocket Press, whatever, and you can do all of that from the command line. So Pocadex is evolving because I think there's also a case to be made for something like Pocket Press uh, being installable without needing to even touch or know about Pocadex at all, where
Mm,
maybe it's the only thing you want to run, right? You're just like, I want to run this thing called Pocket Press. Maybe Pocket Press actually installs Pocketbase for you as well. It's just like
mm,
npm install Pocket Press, and boom, the whole thing is on your machine.
mm,
Pocket Press is powered by PocketPages and Pocketbase underneath. Um, so I think there are like two ecosystems that I see coming for Pocketbase. One is an app ecosystem where
mm,
it's like I want to run some app powered by Pocketbase, and it just takes over the whole thing, right? And it's just like I'm running a blog using Pocketbase. Um, and then I think there are other applications that are more like plugins that you might want to use to extend functionality of the app that you're building, right?
yeah.
So one's kind of more of like, I don't want to say end user exactly because it probably is still gonna, since you have to either self-host or put it on Pocket Host or something. Like there's still, it's not like just going to Squarespace or something, right? You've still got to have a little bit of technical knowledge. You have to have that sense of like that desire for sovereignty, which a lot of people in the Pocket-based community have. Like they're like, I
Yeah.
want to run this myself on my own server, and I don't want anybody messing with me, which I totally understand. I just, and some people have criticized Pocket Host as sort of like, well, doesn't that defeat the purpose of Pocket Base? Because here, the whole point was to self-host, and now here you are letting somebody else do it for you again. And what's that about? And
Mm,
my answer there is well, you can always go self-host if you want to. Some
mm,
people, I think, are willing to trade some sovereignty temporarily, at least, to get up and running quick and to have a whole managed environment and everything.
yeah.
Um, including me. I mean, I built it for myself, and I understand that like it's different because I'm hosting the whole thing, but
Yeah.
it's still, there's something to be said for a managed platform, and I think that's what Pocket Host is doing for people. But anyway, however you're building your app, self-hosting it or whatever, you might go to Pocadex to find plugins to do to extend various features or functions of Pocketbase itself. Like
Mm,
Gani just implemented one-time passwords in version 23, but if you're using
so good.
22 or below, you don't have OTP. So,
Yeah.
but there's a Pocadex plugin for OTP. You can use that, and it works pretty well. You have to do some wiring up, like you still have to create the front end for it. It doesn't provide that for you. Um,
Yeah.
but but then another plugin that could emerge is like a PocketPages OTP that does provide some kind of front end. Um,
Mm,
so like these plugins can sort of like depend on each other too. So
mm,
I could see a real ecosystem growing up around plugins, and people create little things all the time. And when I find them, I suggest like, hey, if you want to collaborate, I can help you turn this into a Pocadex plugin so that anybody can install it. And invariably, it's always, because this is all there is right now, it's somebody has a GitHub repo and they've got their JS hooks in the GitHub repo along with a few migration files, and you can basically just de-git the whole thing to your directory, and there you go, and it works. But like, how do you uninstall that? Like if you don't
Yeah,
want it
true.
anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely room for a more formalized plugin architecture where it's like, here's how I express localized migrations that belong to this plugin, where this plugin owns those migrations, and if you uninstall the plugin, it
Mm,
will reverse all those migrations and remove the thing. Or you can just disable the plugin where the plugin doesn't run, but the migrations stay, right? Just
mm,
like WordPress has. So
mm.
I think there's a lot of room for that, and then there's a lot of room, I think, for actual apps. Like, I'm talking about Pocket Press, but who's going to make Pocket Shop, right? Where
Mm.
you have your own storefront, Pocket Store, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? I mean,
Woo
there's
Pocket.
lots of room. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think it's interesting. One of the things which I think is great about having hooks files, and because I've been doing some of my own integrations with Lemon Squeezium and Stripe, and that's mainly done through the hooks. And I have a little like PB migrations, not a migrations file, sorry, like a schema file where people can just pop that in. Where do migrations come into play? Like, is that where you've got pre-existing data where you're going to need to have that merged into an existing Pocketbase instance?
You mean for plugins, where do migrations come into
Yeah,
play?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so well, so you can imagine a plugin might need its own set of collections or something just to track its own data, right?
Mm,
Um, that that's a pretty easy version. And if I were recommending to people how to architect their plugins, I would say just create your own tables. Don't try to modify uh, like
existing tables.
the stock tables, or don't depend on other tables to, I'm saying tables, collections to be there. Um,
Mm,
Create your own plugin. Like, say you did have, say you were writing a storefront in
mm,
PocketBase.
mm,
You're going to have a collection for orders, and the
mm,
orders will have a user ID in it, right?
mm.
So you would
Right.
try not to change the user collection itself. You would just create that user ID column in the orders collection, and whatever else you wanted to track about the orders.
Mm,
Um, you'd have a product table with some relational links there and everything. But hopefully you'd end up with the shop component of your Pocketbase application would be its own set of tables. Okay.
yeah.
Then if you wanted to convert that into a plugin, you would take the migration files just for those tables. You'd move them
Yeah.
into the plugin, and you'd probably want to give those collections like a prefix, where like you have a unique name for your plugin. So it would be,
Mm,
plugin name underscore products, plugin name underscore orders. That's how
mm.
WordPress does it, you know.
So it's
Um,
basically all those things are abstracted away and are hidden from the user who's opening up Pocketbase. Like that, they're just, I've just installed Pocket Shop, but in my Pocketbase instance, I can't see any of those actual collections because that's all just hidden within and contained within that plugin. Is that right?
you might be able to hide them. I, I would say show them though, like,
Yeah.
if they're logging into the Pocketbase admin, it's really a super admin, right? It's the
Yeah.
one where it's, you have total privileges. You want to be able to see everything going on with your Pocketbase instance. So I would say show it in those. Um,
Yeah.
what also is missing from the Pocketbase ecosystem right now is some concept of a user admin that's not a super admin, but like an application admin, right? So
Yeah.
another example of a Pocadex plugin that somebody could write is like, call it app admin. And the app admin would be something that would be extensible so that the plugins could hook into it and add their own pages and user interfaces into the app admin. Because that's something Gani doesn't really want. He doesn't want to pollute the Pocketbase super admin with extensions. This has been discussed, and like, hey, I have some feature that I added, like one-time passwords. I want to be able to log into the Pocketbase admin and click on some new sidebar item that says, one-time passwords, and I want to be able to manage some settings from there or something. I don't think Gani wants to go there. He wants to say like, no, this is the Pocketbase super admin. This, there's no plugin system for that. But if we make an app admin, there could absolutely be a plugin system for that, where if you're going in to manage your app features and plugin settings and things like that, you could do it from there. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing with Pocadex, it may already be done, I can't remember, but implementing some kind of basic settings system so that if your plugin just needs to like manage a few settings and things like that, it doesn't have to create its own migrations for it. It doesn't have to create its own separate collections, like just some kind of key value store that Pocadex offers by default, where you call it with your key name and some JSON value that you want to store, and Pocadex knows how to store that in its own settings table in a way that's like scoped locally for your plugin, so that things don't get confused and you don't have name collisions, stuff like that. So I think for a lot of plugins, they don't even need to mess with migrations at all. But if you're building a big plugin like a storefront or something, you would want to have those migrations, and then you'd want to have some kind of admin, like a user or app admin that's like separate from the Pocketbase admin, some kind of UI where you can go in and like add products and fulfill orders and mark orders as complete, and do those kinds of shop things that wouldn't really fit in the you could like go in and edit the raw data in the Pocketbase admin, but that's dicey. So I think we are going to eventually need an answer for how do I make a user admin that has like all of my app features, and how I manage those app features. And I think that could also be something that comes out of the Pocadex ecosystem.
Yeah, because I think it's definitely needed, and I like I mentioned, a lot of people are chasing it down, and for me, like I'm looking at how can I migrate the stuff that I'm working on into Pocketbase or into Pocadex. And that's definitely going to be something I'm going to be working on for Lemon Squeezy, and I'm even thinking of doing Paddle as well.
Yeah.
I
Well,
wanted
Lemon
to.
Squeezy is a great example, though. So, sorry to cut you off, but
Sorry, go
to drive
go.
home the point.
Yeah.
Lemon Squeezy is a great example. I have a Lemon Squeezy, sort of, it's very bespoke for PocketHost, right? You've got a Lemon Squeezy hook that does whatever it needs to do for you, right?
Yeah.
If there were a way to generalize it into a plugin that people could use, that would be cool. But the very next question would be, well, where do I go to like manage the settings for my Lemon Squeezy plugin? How, where is that admin? Do I have to just go into the tables and like put in my key or whatever? Like where do I go to configure my Lemon Squeezy plugin? And that's where I think that Pocadex admin concept could be really helpful for plugin authors.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the things which really annoyed me just on the subject about actually developing that Lemon Squeezy stuff was that I had to, for my hooks, I had to in the routes, I had to copy the API key and any secret key. I wasn't able to use the constant variable outside of that, and that's again another like drawback of the JSVM is that it's just you can't do that sort of stuff that you'd normally be able to do in Node,
Yeah, well, unless you use PocketPages. If you use PocketPages, it'll feel a lot better. because I take care
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
exactly, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so if you write the lemon squeezy stuff as a raw pocket base hook, you're exactly right. You've got to copy that key in everywhere, or at least pull it from an environment variable. But you've got to duplicate that in every single hook. Everything in every hook stands alone. So,
Yeah.
that's that's a really hard programming environment. And
Yeah.
it's not intuitive. So, but Pocket Pages abstracts that. So you can have, um, like sort of global variables if you want to, or scoped variables anyway.
Oh, really?
You Yeah, yeah, you could write your lemon squeezy endpoints, your API endpoints, the webhooks that lemon squeezy hits. You could write
Yeah.
those as Pocket Pages endpoints, and then you would be able to manage your settings centrally, because Pocket
Yeah.
Pages will do that. And yeah, so I mean that's like one of the reasons that I set about to make Pocket Pages, was I was getting tired of duplicating everything for each
Yeah.
hook.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's really really bad. Listen, Ben, I wanted to do a little segment here, to look at basically the oldest GitHub project that I could find from you, and I just wanted you to
Oh,
like walk me through sort of how what this does, and what was your thought process at the time, in building
okay.
this. So
Let
I'm
me
going
see.
to just
So I've
I'm
got
gonna share up my
77
screen.
repos. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you found it already?
Yeah, this is your oldest repo on your GitHub. So what
Camel.js. Oh, okay.
what is Haml.js?
Let's see. It says it's a command line package for the awesome Haml.js. So remind me what Haml.js is. Click into that Haml.js project.
Okay.
Okay, published 11
I,
years ago. Oh, it's okay, it's a Haml implementation for Node.js. All right, so this had to be something back in the maybe my PHP days, because PHP used Haml a lot, and I think I had a Haml habit for for a while there, even
yeah.
after I got into Node. Okay, so go back to my repo again. I don't really see
Oh,
any code in my repo. Where's the?
hold on, let me go back here.
Does it have? Is it maybe in bin?
In Haml.js.
Okay, so we got some old school stuff. Oh, I was using Commander back then too. So what does it do? Okay, so it grabs all the Haml files, and it probably, I'm guessing, what does it do? Probably converts them into HTML files. Let's see. Uh, it, okay, it makes the directory, and then it writes a file, but what does it do? Oh yeah, Haml render on line 35 there. Okay, yeah. So it looks like this grabs all the Haml files in a directory and changes them to HTML files and renders them out. Yeah, that's what this
So
does.
so what does Haml do, and how were you using it back then?
Okay, so Haml is a shorthand HTML kind of like meta language. Uh,
Yeah.
I think it uses like indentation instead of brackets for nesting. So
Yeah.
you can like write stuff in a more compact form, I guess, which seemed like a good idea at the time. I
Yeah.
think really everybody's gotten away from these like Haml, CoffeeScript, except, well, Sass and Less are still used a lot. But even Tailwind is kind of bringing people back to just raw CSS, and not so much. Yeah, there was like this trend of like meta languages on top of HTML and CSS, right?
Yeah.
And Haml was one of those. So back in like the PHP days, you could write a PHP file in Camel with PHP escapes instead of HTML, and then it would, it would know how to render that as HTML. So I'm guessing this had something to do with that. There's no context for this package, so I'm not sure like what project I used it in or anything like that.
Yeah. I just thought it would be interesting to go through that. So,
Well,
that's cool.
that's not even the oldest. I deleted a bunch of. I had like over 300 projects, and I'm sure they're long gone by now.
What was your first project that you worked on?
Well, I did a lot of PHP stuff, and I made this whole framework in PHP that I called Click, because it was modular and you could click these pieces together through this sort of event system. So um, everything was an event, a named event where you'd broadcast that it's time for that event to happen, and then any code listening for that event would perform whatever actions it needed to, and then those results would all be rolled up into the final response that would go out. So you had this like super pluggable. I mean, here I was like all those years ago, still doing plugins, super pluggable architecture for building applications. And that thing ballooned into, I mean, there were probably over like 100 different little PHP packages that were designed for that Click framework. And yeah, I think I got rid of all that. So yeah, it does seem like Haml.js is the oldest in my repo. I'm just looking for like, did I hide them or did I delete them? I think I just like fully deleted them. Um,
No.
and and then like, yeah, I mean, I still have the zip file somewhere on my laptop. And then it looks like right after that, I'm just looking at the project history, Gulp Wave Surfer and Wave Surfer Peak Builder. These were all when I was working on that podcast I was talking about. Yeah, Unsigned is the next oldest one. That's 2018. That was the Unsigned website. So 2018 was when I did that podcast. That's when that thing started. And I think I
Yeah.
did it for maybe like a year, something like that. Um, and then, yeah, more PHP stuff. I'm just kind of looking through my project history. And then, yeah, uh, by 2020, I was like squarely into Node.js, and there's almost no PHP after 2020. Yeah,
So talk to me a
cool
little
little.
bit about your background as well, Ben, because like I remember like we didn't record this part, but you were telling me about like how you sort of got into development and that you're a muso and like you've got multiple interests. Talk to me about them.
Yeah, so I was probably like 9 years old, and I used to get this magazine, and on the back cover of the magazine was this basic language printout. And I would wait for that magazine every month, and and it would come, and I'd type that thing in really meticulously, and it would never run correctly. And I would be sure that I typed everything in exactly right and that they had made a mistake in their printout. And I would pore over it for days until I'd finally notice that there was like a little comma missing somewhere, or I did a single quote instead of a double quote, because I didn't understand anything about like how to read even the error messages or what the error messages meant. So it was just
Yeah.
very like it was super trial and error. And then my dad offended me by bringing home a book about how to program, and I was not a computer nerd, so I was very offended that he thought so. Um,
Yeah.
and I just left that book on the bookshelf for, to my kid brain, it was probably, I mean, it seemed like years, but it was probably only maybe a month or two. Um,
Yeah.
and I just was bored one day, so I took a peek at it, just opened this how to program book, and it just pulled me in, and I
Yeah.
couldn't stop reading it. And then I read another one, and then I read another one, and I was the kid we'd go on a ski trip or something, and I'd be in the ski lodge just reading my book because I'd rather be learning about that than doing anything else in the world. So, that's how I came up.
Yeah.
And then by the time you said you started programming around like 19 or so, did you say? Yeah.
Well, I did. I started when I was 12, but I gave up because I was like, this is too hard. But then I got back into it, and yeah, just
Oh,
same
yeah,
thing.
dude. I
Yeah.
remember I would get stuck for months on concepts because like my brain was physically not developed enough to understand what the block was, right?
Yeah.
Like Cartesian coordinates like stumped me for probably 6 months. I couldn't understand how two variables could change simultaneously. That didn't make any sense to me. And I remember this like light bulb went off. Like one day I just like had the ability to think about that, and I didn't
Yeah.
have that ability previously. So it was like I was too young to be doing what I was doing, but it didn't matter because it was just fun. And I
Yeah.
remember talking to, like, I was up 3 in the morning. Some guy I never even met in person was trying to explain to me how pointers in C worked. Uh, and I didn't understand this like indirection kind of idea. Like, here's a value that's pointing to something else. That didn't make any sense to me either. And like, no matter how many times he explained it, it was just like, nope, don't get it. So uh, yeah. So by the time I was, 17, 18, 19, all that stuff started to solidify enough that I was actually like capable. um, and that was just like that was the dawn of the web. So I'm thinking back to like it would have been like 96 or something like that, where people were just starting to ask like, what's the web? Can you make me a website? And of course I could not make them a website, but that didn't stop me. I was like, sure, I'll make you a website, no problem. I mean,
Yeah.
am I gonna go bag groceries down at the local market, or am I gonna let this guy pay me obscene money for trying to figure out how to do what I think is fun anyway? So it's like, I'll
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of freelancing for me. And I thought it was just going to be one project and then done, and I'd go back to whatever my life was going to be. And then like another project came, and another project came, and another, and I just kept. I'm still like whatever it is now, 30 years later almost. I'm still waiting for the party to stop, where nobody calls me and asks me to do something, because I still have this habit of like, well, that's not going to happen again. That was just a fluke, you know, that somebody called me and wanted me to work on their project. Like, I just do this stuff for fun anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've been freelancing the whole time, which means I've gone through all the, there, like first it was PHP, then people jumped over to ASP, and then ASP.NET, and then it was like back to PHP. Python came in there for a while, um, and then at some point Node.js came around, and everybody was like, well, that's stupid, who would want JavaScript on the server? um, and like, look where it's gone now. It's like, it's great. It runs a lot of stuff now. But
Yeah.
weirdly, PHP still dominates. I mean, in terms of, you know like, just ubiquity. PHP is nothing has had a better answer to web development than PHP. I,
Yeah.
I would say. And maybe I don't really see how this could be true, but it's possible that I have some kind of confirmation bias that the clients who call me prefer PHP for some reason. But I don't think that's true. I think what's true is I've seen more projects have seen the light of day using PHP than I think all the other ones combined. And to me that means that there's something about PHP that, and I think it's that it lets you start so simply
Yeah.
and iterate so easily.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a magic property of PHP. Like, you could build that in a different way. We're going to have it in Pocket Pages, but
Yeah.
there's something about that ability to just start with like literally just one file and one line and
Yeah.
build your concept from there. That's, I think that resonates with people who really want to ship stuff,
Yeah.
right? People
Simplicity
who,
is beautiful.
it's beautiful and it's pragmatic. It's a super
Yeah.
pragmatic environment where it's like, I just want to ship it. I don't care if it
Mm.
doesn't follow best practices and everything. I just want to get it out there. I will fix it later if anybody even cares about my, invention.
Right.
So I think that there's a pragmatism to PHP that we can bring to Pocketbase, and I think that could be really killer for the platform. And that's an area where I think Donnie and I kind of diverge,
Mm.
because he's very focused on, no, I want to deploy one compiled file.
Mm.
I don't think Gani even cares that much about the JS hooks. I think he did that because people kept complaining, and so he's like, okay, fine. Here's a JSVM. I don't like it. I don't recommend it, but it's here if you want it.
Mm.
That to me kind of seems like his attitude about it.
Mm.
He wants to just extend everything in Go, compile it, and ship one file out to the server.
Mm.
That is, to me, a terrible process for me. It doesn't feel good to me to have that build step and that deploy step every time I want to iterate on something.
Mm.
And I don't want to develop locally. I want to hot dog it on the server. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that really, you could say like, oh well, I'm just a dinosaur that came from a different time or something, but I think there's something to the pragmatism of, I want to hop on that server and make a change and see it happen and just like have a very tight iteration, a very tight development cycle. That's what
Yeah.
everybody's trying to get back to. I mean, even look at that new one. Have you looked at Convex? There's a
I haven't looked at
there's a
Convex. No.
Okay, so Convex is it's a TypeScript first um, database backend. So it's sort
Mm.
of a competitor to PocketBase in the sense that it's a backend, but it's
Mm.
not self-hosted. If you
Mm.
go to convex.dev, it's a really cool project, and
Is it
they're
open source?
well, like Supabase is open source, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
No, there's just a lot to make it run globally and be responsive. There's like a whole infrastructure build out that has to happen. That's not like, it's not feasible to like I don't know what they would open source, just the instructions on how to build it or something. But
Yeah.
which, by the way, I mean, PocketHost is the same way. Like the dirty secret about PocketHost is like, good luck self-hosting PocketHost, because
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into. And by the way, good luck self-hosting Pocketbase. Like, you can put it out there on a VPS, and you can be like,
Yeah.
sweet, I'm self-hosting, and it's like, not really. Like, if you get into hosting, there's like so many issues that I've had to work with in PocketHost just to get it robust enough that it doesn't fail under various real world scenarios. and
Yeah.
and you could say like, well, yeah, but you have to contend with running a bunch of instances all at once, and I'm just running my one instance on my one VPS and keeping it very simple. And it's like, right, you can look at it that way, but you can also look at it as PocketHost itself is a Pocketbase app running at scale. There are
Yeah.
thousands of users using this what is he sent at the bottom of it. It itself is a Pocketbase app.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, self-hosting the Pocketbase app that is PocketHost is hard. So it's
Yeah.
not easy to host. So Convex is a hosted managed solution, but you write all of your queries in TypeScript. You write all of your hooks and your actions in TypeScript. You edit it locally. It instantly beams it over to their infrastructure and runs it. So you have like a super tight development cycle. It's really cool,
Mm.
except that my I even thought at times about like, oh, they have completely solved this problem like way better than PocketHost or PocketBase ever will. Maybe I should just start developing convex for my backend instead of PocketBase. But then, user auth is something you have to bolt on to convex. It doesn't come with it, and they may solve that at some point. There's a feeling I have about convex that's like, if I wanted to have that sovereignty that we talked about, I couldn't have it with convex. Yeah, I could download their open source version and I could like set up convex on my own server, but it would not run at scale the way it does on their platform. And that means that I'm locked in to using their platform if I have an app that's of any substantial size.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually a problem, but it feels like a problem. It's the same problem, that's how Firebase feels like a problem too.
Yeah.
And but with PocketBase, it's like, all right, fine, so self-host your instance or host it on PocketHost. It doesn't matter. You're going to need to contend with whatever your particular issues are of how to scale your app. And you're going to have to do that in a way that retains that sovereignty. So like, there's nothing about PocketHost that locks you in. Like, you could just download your database and go self-host it somewhere, and it would be roughly the same experience, because PocketBase runs on a single origin. You can't scale it horizontally, and like, that's another topic we could get into. But like, no matter what people say or think, PocketBase cannot be scaled horizontally, at least not by just like setting up multiple instances and somehow like having replication happen or something like that. Like, it won't work that way. And I think you even pointed it out, right? That there's a whole event system built into PocketBase that won't work in a replicated environment. So that's just scratching the surface of it. So if you want to build a scalable app using PocketBase, you're going to have to solve that in a way that is that's right for your application. And that means that you own the scaling strategy for your application. And that seems a lot better to me than outsourcing that to Convex. So that's the only reason I haven't used Convex. I think it's a really cool platform, but I don't want to outsource my scaling to them. Because then I lose that sovereignty, and that's what we're all here because we want our pirate ships. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's maybe a good segue to the next segment, which I want to run through with you, which is the meme segment. So I pulled these memes from our programmer Humor, and
okay, I'm gonna fail so hard at this.
All right. Okay. All right. So this is the first one. If open source is so great, then how come this app developed for free by hobbyists is slightly worse than the one developed for millions of dollars by an all-star team of designers and engineers? What do you rate this meme?
Okay, let me try to parse this. So why is open source worse than the one that's funded by and built by an all-star team? Is that what this means?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm kind of struggling with the premise that it's slightly worse, because I can think of a lot of open source projects, Pocketbase for one, where there really is no commercial answer to it. So I don't know that it's always worse, but like, okay, and this is, so you're asking me how I rate this as a meme, like in terms of like it rings true? Is that kind of what we're doing?
Well, it can ring true, like just as a meme. Like, what is this good or is this not?
I would not laugh at this. This is like a 2 out of 10.
This is a 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I think most of the $1 million apps anyways are built on open source, right? Like, you got so many.
Yeah. It just the whole thing doesn't track. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, second meme. What do we rate this?
Okay, yeah, I'll give that one like a good 9. I think
A good
that's
9.
that this one speaks to my heart because one of the reasons I think I'm unemployable at this point, and I'm happy with that. But I never wanted to like get in my car and commute to work, right? Or
Yeah.
wear a particular dress code. I just probably that's why I resonate with the Pocketbase project so much. I mean, I don't know if that's how Ghani feels, but like just the whole sovereignty thing. Like, don't tell me what to wear.
Yeah.
Don't tell me when to show up or where to show up. So yeah, I can imagine that the top engineers would be very disagreeable with company culture and social conventions and things like that. So I like this one.
Is it true? Is it like have you, in the companies you've worked at, have, like, obviously you're probably up there in terms of an engineer yourself, but like working with high level engineers, like, is it true?
Um, well, I suppose that depends a lot on the company that you're working at. If it's a startup, I would say
Yeah.
this is pretty true, and that for the most part, I'm this guy in the startup
Yeah.
because they're hiring me to sort of be the CTO and to spike the first version of their software, and I get
Yeah.
completely bored as soon as there's anything repetitive happening. It's like I'm out. You hire a team for this. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And if I have to put on this many clothes, it's a bad day for me. So yeah.
Okay. What's the rating?
Oh,
Right
I'll
out of
give this a
10.
9. I relate to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
if Adam
Gotcha.
Sandler's a programmer though.
No, he's not. But he's got that look. He's got the look down.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Third meme.
Okay. The programmer had a problem. He thought to himself, I know, I'll solve it with threads. He now has that's yeah, that's okay. That's a 10, man. That's that's really funny. Yeah, yeah, totally. The
Yeah.
other there's another meme I really like. I don't even know where to find it, but it says uh programmers in their hearts are optimists because every time they press run, they believe it might.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I've had like 2 or 3 times in my life where I hit run and it actually did. Like on the first try, like I just like created some code, I hit run, and it was like, oh my God, I think that just worked. Like that's crazy. That never happens to me. Um, Maybe it happens to other people a lot more, but I pretty much find my way through by trying every wrong way, and then I eventually work my way around to what I probably should have known to do in the first place. At least that's how it feels. Is by the time I arrive at the solution, the actual solution, I look at it and I'm just like, I feel like such an idiot because like clearly this is the solution and it always was the solution and I don't know what I was thinking about all the rest of the stuff. But it's like there's
Mm,
you somehow, I don't know if everybody does, but like I have to go through this process that is, it's like a process of actually I'm not understanding what the problem is in the first place. I think I know, but I don't actually understand the problem. And it's only by working it and working it and working it that I finally understand exactly what the problem really is. And then it's easy to solve. But
yeah.
and Pocket Host is full of that. Like if we ever did like a little code review on Pocket Host and you were asking like, why is this line of code in here? I would be
Yeah.
able to tell you like, oh, well, it's because of this situation or that situation. Or in some cases, that's dead code. It doesn't even need to be in there anymore. I've
Yeah.
been on a major, I've been on a major kick deleting code ever since Papa Elon was on that Lex Friedman episode where he was talking about delete, delete, continue deleting until you find yourself adding 10% back. And if you're not adding 10% back of what you deleted, you're not deleting aggressively enough. So
Yeah.
I've been on this kick where I've been going through PocketHost and just saying, I don't need that code. I don't need that code. Get it out of here. Delete, delete. And it's actually worked pretty good. I have
Has
hit
it?
that point where it's like, oh, I need to put that back. That part was actually important.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's one of the things is like when you're scaling an app and like you get like I think people use that term tech debt like way too much, but you just as a programmer you get into a place where it's not necessarily tech debt, but it's just a lot to wade through, and then you're at that point where it's like, well, I can cut back or continue on. Like, how do you choose when is the right time to do that? Because that feels like a housekeeping task, but it's so important.
Yeah, I can tell you how I choose it. If I have to make a separate branch for something, it's probably too big and too unapproachable to actually ever finish. I would say
Mm.
very few of my branches in PocketHost ever actually get merged into the main line again. I'll go off in a
Mm.
branch and I'll try to do something, but it's like I have this intuition, like as soon as I create a branch, I it's like I already know this thing it's going to be too big. It's going to pull in a bunch of other, dependencies and considerations that I'm not really ready to commit to yet. Um,
Mm.
but that's just I reach this personal threshold where it's like, I think I should create a branch to capture all these changes because I I've made some changes and I want to commit those and keep going, but I'm not ready. I know that it'll be broken if I commit these, right? So that's
Mm.
when I head into a branch, and then it's like commit, commit, commit. And every commit in my branches just says WIP, work in progress. Because I don't even care what it is. I'm just trying to save it and like get it out of the way. Because my coding process, I use a lot of I look at the diffs a lot. Um,
Mm.
as I'm coding. Sometimes I even code in the diff version in VS Code, just so I can see like what it was and what it is, and once I'm satisfied with it, I'll commit that to get it out of the way, and then I'll keep
Mm.
going with a new set of diffs, right? So, but I find out almost invariably if I start a branch like that, it's never getting merged. But there are
Yeah.
pieces of it that I'll pull in. I'll be like, actually, that little change I made, which came from some other, unrelated need, that little change I could pull that in first, and that would get me a little bit closer to this branch being mergeable, right?
Yeah.
So like right now, I just watched some podcast where this guy was talking about hard paywalls. Have you heard that term, hard paywall? I didn't either. So we know what a paywall is. Well, a hard paywall is
Mm.
where you get to the end and there is no free option. You get to the end of this onboarding wizard, and it's like, okay, well, you can pay 14.99 a month, or you can pay 29.99 a month, and
I hate
or you can
that.
buy
I
the
hate
lifetime.
that.
Everybody hates it. I hated it too. You download a free app and you hit this hard
Yeah.
paywall before you even had a chance to use the app, and it's like
Yeah.
everybody hates it. But the guy on the podcast was like, my app languished for 4 years until I implemented the hard paywall. And I think the reason it worked is that it got people to commit to a purchasing decision. He gives them a 7-day free trial. They can always cancel it later, but he gets them to commit to the purchasing decision up front. And he
Yeah.
he creates the onboarding so that it's like it demonstrates the value and gets them thinking about like how valuable the problem is for them and all this stuff, right? So I'm like, okay, let's see what that feels like for PocketHost. So I created
Yeah.
this branch, hard paywall branch, and I made this cool wizard and stuff. And I don't know if I'm going to put it out there, but
Yeah.
there were a couple things in it, a couple changes in it that were like, oh, that little piece is actually good to pull into the main branch now. So I'm gonna do that. And so I sort of pull it in by bits and pieces, hoping to eventually get close enough that I maybe could merge this branch, but it still rarely happens. It's
Yeah.
like there's something about like small incremental progress for me is the only way forward that I can find.
Yeah.
And like Gani just pulled off some huge stunt, like refactoring the whole thing, and now
That
there's
was
a version
crazy.
20. Yeah, and
Yeah.
when he said he was doing that, I was like, man, good luck, because if it were me, that would never ship.
Yeah.
I would never be able to finish that branch, and somehow, well, I think he did, but I mean, it's still on release candidates, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of telling too, because it's like, what is he on? Like release candidate 8 or something like that, and it's still
Yeah.
going. It's still not quite released. So
Yeah.
it's like those types of refactors are not successful for me.
Yeah.
And maybe, but like maybe he can do it, man. I mean, he did the thing in the first place, so maybe he can do it again.
I've like literally just loved chatting with you and like hearing your story, and I'm really excited for Pocket Pages, Pocket Host, and I've already gone and bought the Flounders deal. Is there anything that you want to say to anyone else? Any plugs or anything like that?
Um, I don't know, not really. I think I like it when people find their own way to
Yeah.
Pocket Base and Pocket Host if they want to.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's necessarily something that anybody needs. I have it for me, and to the extent that it works for other people, I'm glad that it does, because that does feel nice. Like that's a nice feeling when something I made is making some other people's lives easier. And I think that's happened with Pocket Host, and that's kind of the first thing that I've really built that's worked that way. So
Yeah.
I like it when they come in and they're just like, dude, this is, thank
Awesome.
God I don't have to set up my own server just to try this thing out. I can just provision a URL here and get back to writing my app.
Yeah.
That feels good to me, and that's what I wanted for myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
if anybody finds themselves there, jump on Discord, say hi. I'm almost always there. I have to leave that thing running even when I'm asleep, because that's where people, if Pocket Host goes down, that's where I got to tell you like a quick story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've got this motorcycle, okay,
Yeah.
and I'm not on a never-ending cross-country trip, but the motorcycle has never come home. So it started here. I'll ride it for 10 days. I'll store it somewhere and I'll fly back from that place. And then whenever I can, I'll resume the trip. I'll fly back to wherever it is, ride for 10 more days to somewhere new. And so this motorcycle's never been home. It's been like 4 years out on the road. And right now, I mean, I'm in Reno, Nevada. It's in Bangor, Maine, which, if you care, that's where the author Stephen King lives. So he's
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
in Maine, and my bike is out there with him. And then we're gonna go up into Canada like next summer and stuff. But I take my laptop with me, and I have more than once. I've been riding. I'm riding on the motorcycle. I see a Discord alert pop up, and I know that it's from the. I know it's from the mega thread, the system health mega thread, and because I can just see the preview, and I'm just like, F, if somebody's posting in the system health mega thread, that means Pocket Host is probably down right now. And so
Yeah.
it's like, do I have cell signal? Yeah, okay. Pull off to the side of the road, pull the laptop out of the back, you know, reboot Pocket Host or do whatever I have to do to fix it, put the laptop away, get back on the road. So literally Pocket Host has been, built from the side of the road in many different in
That's
many different
crazy.
places. Yeah.
Man, when did you start this?
Pocket Host?
No,
Or
the motorcycle trip.
Oh, yeah. So maybe like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. I'm a yoga teacher too, and so the original concept was I'm just going to go from town to town, riding my bike, just offering like yoga workshops during the
Yeah.
summer, like in the parks or wherever. And that was kind of like my mission was got to get to the next town for the yoga workshop. And sometimes 0 people would show up, sometimes 10 people would show up. It didn't really matter to me. I was just I was using it as a reason to get to the next place.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got good enough at getting to the next place that I felt like I guess I don't really need to rush myself and offer a yoga workshop everywhere I go. So it just kind of turned into more of just a pure adventure. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it started that way. Probably like 4 years ago, I'm thinking.
Damn, dude, that's crazy. What made you want to do that?
Well, I've got y- uh I knew I wanted to like take little motorcycle trips, and I've got a couple kids, and I
Yeah.
sat down with my kids and I said, "Hey, like realistically, how long can I be gone?" You know? And at the time they were like, "Dad, 10 days like tops. Like you can't be gone more than 10 days. We can't do that." So I thought to myself, "Well, shoot, 10 days, that's 5 days out, and then I have to turn around and come 5 days back, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm limited to this 5-day radius around Reno, Nevada, which if you look at the map, it's like a whole lot of desert in
Yeah.
most of the directions. Like there's just so I thought, what can I do? Um, I have 10 days. What can I do? Well, would it be weird if I just rode for 10 days and left the bike somewhere and flew home? I'd never
Yeah.
tried that. I'd never bought a one-way plane ticket anywhere before. Like that was
Yeah.
strange to me. Everybody bought you want to come back, you got to buy a round trip ticket. But no, so here I am like buying a one-way ticket to one city, riding, ending up in a different city and buying another one-way ticket home. And it just started that way. And then I've just
Wow.
been like stitching together this whole trip all around, currently around the United States, but like I said, we're gonna head into Canada. And it's gotten funny enough that now I'll almost always have somebody with me.
Yeah.
Either my partner, she'll go, or one of my kids or the other. So we just did. You can look it up. It's called Tail of the Dragon. It's one of the most famous motorcycle rides in the world, and we've got it here in the United States. It's like 311 turns in 11 miles or something crazy like that, called Tail of the
Wow.
Dragon. Um, it's just a spectacular ride, and it's kind of the dream ride that every biker knows about it, and they want to go experience Tail of the Dragon sometime.
Is this
Um,
it here?
did you find it here? Uh,
Yeah.
yep, that's it. That's it. So right, so like that, uh, any of those pictures of like the twisty roads, or on YouTube, they even have like drone footage, going over Tail of the Dragon. Yeah, uh, if you search for like if you search on YouTube for like Tail of the Dragon drone, you'll see crazy crazy good drone footage. Let's see it here.
You need to
Yeah,
get it
jump
up
in there
here.
somewhere. Yeah,
Sorry,
there you
my
go.
what?
Ah,
Yeah.
that's what it looks like. There's a road in there somewhere. Yep, there it is. So
Yeah.
so this road is so famous that it has professional photographers stationed at some of the turns, where you have to note the date and the time that you went through the turn, and then you go to their website and you can find these pictures of you like in a hard lean on one of the turns or something.
What?
So, I got to do this. I took one of my kids out and did it. Then I took my other kid out and did it. Then I took my partner out and did it. So, I've been through Tail of the Dragon like 6 times now, which is, more than probably a lot of riders ever get to do. So it's like I feel really fortunate, and it's all because of this. It's all because my kids said they didn't want me gone for more than 10 days, that I figured out this whole method of like storing the bike and coming back later,
Yeah.
So it's just like,
How
I don't
how,
know, like,
how do you store it though? Like, because that's got to be hard as well. Like,
uh all you need is a little like 5 foot by 10 foot storage unit. Those are available most every city in the United
yeah,
States. Um, and yeah, you park it in there, put it up on the center stand. I always um, I always shut it down as if I'm storing it for the winter. I always winterize it because I don't actually know the next time I'm coming back to get it. One time I
yeah,
thought I was coming back a month later. A bunch of family stuff happened and everything. It was 16 months before I got back to the bike.
wow,
So yeah, so I always winterize it because I'm never totally sure when I'm coming back to get it. But
yeah,
yeah, it's just kind of like a fun escape, and a lot of Pocket Host has been built out on the road where I can get away, and I'm just in some little motel somewhere hacking on
yeah,
Pocket Host. So yeah, I mean, it's been a fun project. It seems like it's got some legs. Like, I think it's going to keep going. It's growing by about 600 users a month, and it has been for pretty consistently for like more than a year. Um, so maybe it'll, I don't know, like, and I hope that it's kind of supporting the Pocketbase project too, not just financially, which it is, but just in terms of somebody new coming to Pocketbase and wondering like, well, how do I play with this? I don't even know how to set it up on my own machine. Like, even that seems too scary. Like, how do I just make an app that talks with Pocketbase, or how do I check it out
yeah,
instantly? Like, that's what I'm hoping that I can do for the Pocketbase community. And there's some other guys out there who are starting, like, there's one that just came around, Pocket, what was it called?
Pocket
There's a
Cloud. I
guy do
saw it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there's Pocket Cloud. There have been a couple others, at least one other one, two others before that that I know of.
How do you
Um,
react when that happens? Like, are you like, oh, it's fine? Like, or do you feel like a little bit like, ah, well, why are they doing it? Like, I've already got this. Like,
well, that's actually what people on Reddit say. They're like, "Why are you doing this? There's already Cap's already got it with Pocket Host. Like, it's fine."
that's what
But
I feel like. Like, I feel like whenever I see that, I'm just like, well, we've already got this as an ecosystem, and we should already be like pulling our resources because there's not many people developing in Pocket Base, like comparatively.
yeah, well, I don't know. There's like, I do feel a little threatened at first, like kind of a knee jerk kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
Especially because none of them have released. They're not open source projects.
Yeah,
And I do sort of judge that a little bit because, you know, Ghani's project is open source, Pocket Host is open source, and now you're coming along. It feels a little antithetical to the
yeah,
community. And they all say the same thing, which is, like, oh well, I'll definitely open source it, or at least pieces of it, when it gets far enough along and things like that. And it's like, I don't buy it. Day one, Pocket Host was open source. Day
yeah,
one. So I don't think they're operating under the same set of principles, and that makes me wonder. It feels a little more like, maybe like predatory or something. Like, if somebody came out and was like, hey, I'm starting a new open source project for hosting, and it's like a fresh approach, whatever, for whatever reason they don't like the way Pocket Host is doing it. Like,
mm,
somebody could, and maybe I will, or maybe Pocket Host will evolve into this, although every time I try, it wants to go back to how it is. But somebody
mm,
could take the Fly.io platform and provision separate VPSs for each Pocket host or Pocketbase instance that
Yeah.
users wanted to run.
Yes. That
Somebody
would be
somebody did
awesome.
try that. Well, it would be awesome, and it would be awesome, and it could be awesome.
Mm.
What I might like to do is if PocketHost could get important enough where it could partner with Fly.io, I think we could do it. Because here's the problem.
Mm.
Remember going back to the stats, there are 10,000 users, there are 12 almost 13,000 instances of Pocketbase, right?
Mm.
Only 3,000 of them or so are active
Mm.
in any given 30-day period, right?
Mm.
Now, if you provision one VPS and just a 1 GB volume,
Mm.
you're paying 30 cents a month for that,
Mm.
assuming it's always on, right? You're paying at least 15 cents a month just for the storage volume. So
Mm.
15 cents a month times 13,000 instances, that is $2,000 a month in hosting fees. That
Yeah.
vastly exceeds Pocket Host's income. And if a funded company or something wanted to come along and say, hey, we've built this global thing, everybody gets their own VP, like a Vercel or a, what's the run, I want to say Runway, but that's not it. There's
Oh, it is Runway. I think
is
that
it?
is one. Yeah, Runway. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like Picapods or uh
Linode
I don't know.
or
There are a bunch where,
yeah.
like one click Pocket Base type deal, right?
Mm.
Which, by the way, again, you're only back to the beginning of the hosting problem. If you're
Mm.
doing the one click provision Pocket Base thing, you're at the beginning of the hosting problem, not the end, not the scaling, not the one that scales. So, but if a
Yeah.
company wanted to come along, or if Fly wanted to, if Fly saw Pocket Host and Pocket Base and said, like, this is important, we want to get involved in this, I would
Mm.
hope that they would consider coming to Pocket Host and saying, hey, we want you to rebuild Pocket Host to run on the Fly infrastructure. We will foot the bill for all these idle instances that are happening, right? Because it,
Yeah.
it costs them just the same as it costs me almost nothing to have idle instances. It costs them almost nothing to have idle instances and storage, because
Yeah.
they're working at a scale that I can't touch. So if they wanted to do that, and they partnered with Tigris, and they partnered with some Redis hosting place, so maybe they could partner with Pocket Host, and if they could give me some favorable pricing, then I would absolutely do it that way instead of Docker containers, because then everybody would have their own dedicated SSH access, their own dedicated instance, their own dedicated storage. Like, that would be cool. And
Yeah.
and we would still build the global edge network, so that connections that came in from anywhere around the globe would go inside our network and then would be routed through VPN, through private pathways to the actual origin. So, if somebody in India wants to access a Pocket-based instance that's living in San Francisco, they would hit the Indian edge. It would go into the private network, and then it would use the private network DNS routing to get to San Francisco, which is way
Mm.
faster than the public network routing. So, like, you could knock this thing out of the park and make like a globally, very responsive Pocket host network on something like Fly.io. And the only reason I'm not doing it is it's cost prohibitive right now. But if
Yeah.
Fly wanted to partner with somebody, with me or with somebody else, they could come in and obsolete Pocket Host that way, at least the current version of Pocket Host.
But the
But
thing for Fly is it's so expensive. Like in terms of, I think your offering is way better than a self host or than hosting with Fly, because at least I'm not going to get taxed on the amount of traffic. Because I think that if you exceed like a certain level of traffic, they automatically start taxing. Whereas you've got like a terabyte of traffic where it's like, beautiful terabyte, I can,
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing about DigitalOcean is they have like really generous bandwidth allowances. So that's why I'm on DigitalOcean right now. And then Cloudflare out in front. Cloudflare caches. I mean, what are they caching now? Let me just look it up real quick. So if I go look up the analytics for Pocket Host on Cloudflare, let me just get to it. So let's see, analytics and logs. Yeah. Okay. Remember that guy I was talking about that had the real-time saturation problem?
Yeah.
He's like far and away so well, I don't know, but it says Bangladesh. So coming from Bangladesh, there were 12 million requests in the last 7 days and 20
Damn.
gigs transferred. I'm pretty sure that's the dude whose app went viral. But what I wanted to look at was web analytics here. Somewhere it tells me like where I can't find it now, but there's a thing about unique visitors in the last 7 days, 128,000 unique visitors, 5 million requests, 70% cache hits. That's from Cloudflare. So like total data served 84 gigs, total data cached 59 gigs. That means, we've only served from the Pocket host origin, we've only served like 30 or so, 35 gigs of the 6 terabytes of bandwidth that we have.
Yeah.
But 35 gigs on Fly times, I guess it's only like 6 cents a gig. I mean, that's still not very much. That's like $2, So but I get what you mean. Like it's that whole metered thing, right? It freaks you out because you don't know what it's going to be. And I agree with that. So like that's another reason I haven't like moved over to Fly completely, because there is kind of a question of like, well, what I'm paying not only for the outgoing bandwidth from each edge, but also from all the internal traffic as well
Yeah.
between edges. And so it's like then
Because
I'm
it's
paying like
combined,
maybe
right? Like
right. So
that's
maybe
the
I'm
way they do it.
like doubles the bandwidth, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why like Fly would need to partner with somebody to make that really viable. Like they did with Tigris. Like Tigris has free ingress and egress to Tigris from Fly. So you pay if somebody uploads something, you pay, but you don't pay again to put it in Tigris, right? And
Right.
I would need something like that from Fly, where it's like, okay, maybe I'll pay the bandwidth for it coming in, but the internal traffic, I would need that to be very low cost somehow. And I'd need for all the idle storage to, I'd need a solution for that. Some guy, I can't remember his name, but it's on the forum somewhere. Some guy maybe like 6 months ago released a hosting version that was, I run on Fly and I spin up a VPS for you. And he was talking to me about it for a while, kind of like, hey, I want to build this service, like, what kind of advice do you have, that kind of stuff. And I told him, like, you're going to run into a problem if it gets popular at all. You're going to have a huge bill from Fly, and I don't really see how that would work for you. But then I kind of stopped talking to him when it became clear that he wasn't really going to open source any of it in at least not in a timely manner, because then I was just like, I'm out. Like I'll talk to anybody, up to that point. But I feel strongly that, especially if you're gonna ask me all these questions, it's like, come on, like put it out there to benefit the community. So
Yeah, because it's got to be. I feel like many programmers, like, they see the Zucks and the Elons, and they're just in it to get the money. But I think that at some stage, like, you've got to give back, like, because all the stuff we've learned has been free, right? Like, it's not. I think that's one of the best things about being a developer, right? Like, is we've got all this free tech. Like, with someone was talking to me about it the other day. Like, with other trades, they have to go and buy their tools. They have to go and, if you wanted to be in electronics, for instance, you've got to go buy those circuits and things like that. We don't have to do that. We just pick up a laptop and that's it. So the software's the tools.
Yeah, and we're in a really unique position where we can branch off of each other's projects, and like sharing is super easy and convenient. And I think people are kind of like missing a major. I, I mean, this gets big, but I think it's almost like it's like a question of the course of humanity. How do you want to see the course of humanity going? And I think creating these ecosystems where we can share among each other, share ideas, is really important for the future. So I like being involved in that. I don't judge people too harshly, if they don't want to be, because maybe there are reasons or whatever. But when you are siphoning resources from open source and you yourself are not open sourcing the results of that, it feels bad to me. So I don't spend much time with people who who cause me to feel that way.
Yeah.
Supabase was also sniffing around kind of when PocketHost first got started. Like, they're watching PocketBase.
They are. They definitely. I've seen them in the forums as well. And, like, what's the problem with Supabase? Whenever anyone, like, complains on the Reddit, they're like, what? CEO of Supabase here. Supabase is great for self-hosting, all the rest of it. Like, whenever anyone complains, I'm just like, no, it's not.
Yeah. That seems a little disingenuous. I haven't seen any of those, but if that's happening, that does seem disingenuous to me.
Yeah.
But I know that they're watching PocketBase, and actually, what I don't understand is how come they haven't just created a PocketBase division of Supabase and, like, crushed PocketHost. Or I don't know that there's really much to acquire. I mean, maybe the user base, or it could be that the most valuable asset of PocketHost is the 10,000 users who, like, the community that's built up around it might be more valuable than the code itself. Because actually, I mean, anybody could take the code and go start up a competitor with it right now. They just wouldn't have the user base. But Supabase has a huge user base. So, like, I wonder why they don't, maybe they perceive it as some kind of cannibalization of their other product. I don't know.
I think it hasn't gotten big enough yet as well. Like, it's really surprised me just this year in 2024 how much, like, Pocketbase has grown. Like, even just on the Reddit, like, it's nearly doubled in size, just this year alone. So I think, like, there's a ton of people entering the ecosystem, and I think it could be brought about by, like, the economy and, like, the changing sort of the desire to go back to self-hosting and stop paying these large companies like tons and tons of money. But yeah, I think that they're watching it until it hits a certain point, and then maybe they might. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I kind of expect that PocketHost might get steamrolled at some point by, just a big company who comes in and decides we want to play in the PocketHost space now.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody is already offering one-click Pocketbase apps, and I think that so people will often compare, like, well, I can deploy on FlyIO myself, or I can do this one-click app. Even DigitalOcean has a one-click Pocketbase, I think.
Yeah.
So, like, why would I want to pay for PocketHost if I can just go do that? Um, and it's like, well, because it's managed, like you're comparing an unmanaged service to a managed service, and I think there's a lot more there than people realize. Um, if Pocket Host goes down, that's my problem, not your problem, right?
Yeah. And you're really good. Like in the forums, like I've messaged you and you're pretty much like onto it straight away, which is like awesome.
Yeah, there have been a couple times where it was like, oh shit, it's been down for like 2 hours and like I didn't know, or something happened, But that's just early days stuff. Like I don't pretend, because it's not staffed. It's just
Yeah.
me, and I have to sleep sometimes. So
Yeah.
for now it's just kind of like a fun thing for, like, if you're a rebel like me, jump on
Yeah.
Pocket Host and give it a try. There's no
Yeah.
service level agreement. There, I don't think like you were saying, I don't think the market exists yet
Mm.
for somebody to really justify, like, if you handed me $1 million and said, you know, go do something with Pocket Host that's, amazing and scalable and, solve all these problems and everything. Um, I would, well, I don't think $1 million would even be enough, because one of the first things I would want to do if I had funding, like probably
Mm.
10 million would do it. If I had 10 million, I would take the Golang project and I would solve the horizontal scaling problem. I would add some way for Pocket-based instances to replicate and communicate with each other. Um,
Mm.
then you could have Pocketbase living out on the edge, all around the globe, and still being consistent in terms of data. I'd probably partner with, I think it's called Terso or something like that, which is
Yeah,
the
Terso, yeah.
yeah, I'd probably partner with them and
Yeah.
say, like, look, you're running all the SQLite databases. We're going to run a custom version of Pocketbase that knows how to scale horizontally, including real-time connections and all the
Mm.
events. You know, um, you'd have to solve the problem of, like, when you make Pocketbase hooks, they, like, where do they run? Do they run on every instance? Some hooks
Mm.
might need to, but other hooks, you might only want it to run on the instance where the update happens, right? So
Mm.
you'd have to have some additional signals that your hooks can receive that tells the hook, am I running on a replicated instance? Am I running on a you know, um, yeah, like a replicant, or am I running on the main instance, the origin?
Mm.
Because there may be, yeah, and then you'd have to mirror all the files everywhere. Like, it would be a huge project, right? To
Yeah, it's a
scale
big deal.
horizontally. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd need like a team of like 3 or 4 really good engineers on that.
Mm.
And um, I don't think Ghani is hireable, but he might be available for consulting for the right price. So if I had a bunch of funding, I might try that. And so that's one thing I would fix, like, first, because that
Yeah.
is a real bottleneck to creating like a globally scalable, available version of Pocketbase. Um,
Yeah.
and then I would use some of the other resources to like actually build out like the scalable network and make sure that the instances launch, and provisioning the instances, and like all that other kind of stuff. So yeah, I bet somebody
Mm.
could do it with 10 million. They could do it.
Yeah.
And if they did, that would crush Pocket Host in its current version, its current iteration. But I don't think the market is there, because if somebody's putting in 10 million, they want to see 100 million back. And I don't think it's there. I don't
Are
think there's even
you
$1 million there right now.
But are you bullish on like Pocketbase as a technology? Do you think more and more people are going to adopt?
Not unless we can get like we need a really good answer to server side pages. That's why I made PocketPages. Um,
Yeah.
I know Gani's
Okay.
working on something too. He's working on like a Go version of it, but it's not gonna be what people do not want to touch Go. That's just
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. Web
Because
developers
you've got
don't
to
want
deal
to
with
touch
so
Go.
much. You got to deal with so
Yeah,
much. Like you got to deal with like protobuf and lots of low level stuff that a JavaScript developer doesn't want to touch.
yeah. Web developers don't want to get into the Golang stack, and
Mm,
so that that's just like that's a fundamental barrier. And I think Go is really performant and it's cool, and sometimes I think about using it for stuff. Sometimes I even think about rewriting PocketHost in Go,
mm,
and I have branches on my machine of like older versions of PocketHost working in Go, and there are definitely advantages to it, but overall I don't see the Go extensibility really resonating with web developers.
mm,
So I think it's got to be something much closer to the web stack, like JavaScript, um, something that works really well with existing web tools and everything like that. And so
mm,
that's how I came to creating Pocket Pages. I'm not saying it's everybody's answer for everything, but we need
mm,
something like that because right now to build a web app powered by Pocketbase is still pretty difficult.
yeah.
Still is. I mean, you can build a front end and you can go a long way, but at some point you've got to contend with server side scripting. And
Yeah.
that's when things really slow down. People really hit a wall with it. And
Yeah.
so I think that Pocketbase could be could emerge as a very important technology. I think it is a very important technology, but it needs an answer to that. It needs an answer
Mm,
to the server side customizing that is really accessible to people. And I don't think we've seen it yet. And maybe it's Pocket Pages. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like for me, that's what it is right now. As far as I
mm,
know, I've gone the farthest in that direction. But you know, we need something like that first, because then we can get into the territory of you know um, making entire user interfaces and admin user interfaces and plugins and all just all the things that go along with extending Pocket Base on the server side. When we have an answer to that and we have a few apps emerge that are like if somebody makes a really cool storefront that's powered by Pocketbase, or
mm,
a really cool, I don't know, it could be a social network, it could be a dating site, it could, probably not a dating site, that's not compelling enough, but like something where, people can grab it and self-host it and fire up their own little business of some kind.
yeah.
And so I don't know if that's like a CMS or a shop or a something, but we need like a killer app that's like
Yeah.
gives people a reason to like install Pocket Base. And I think if we can get there, then things will really blow up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then it'll be like really mainstream where people will recognize like, oh shit, this is a really powerful engine underneath all of this. Pocket Base is a really powerful engine, and like it built this thing, that means it can build my thing too, right?
Yeah.
Because like somebody needs to demonstrate like this is a very cool app that is built using Pocket Base. And
Yeah.
I don't know what that is right now. Like I'm looking for it, but to my knowledge, Pocket Host might be the biggest Pocket Base app right now. I,
Yeah.
I don't say that to boast, but like just can anybody tell me is there a Pocket Base app with more active users and everything like that than PocketHost itself. Maybe this
Yeah.
guy's viral app that just came up a few days ago, like he has more than 10,000 users now.
Yeah.
PocketHost has 10,000 users. He's got more. So he, like, in theory, might have a bigger app than mine. But I'm really curious to know, like, yeah, what is that? But his thing isn't open source, So it's like, what is the killer app that everybody wants, and it's powered by Pocketbase? That's an
Yeah.
answer we don't have yet. Very hooked on Pocketbase, as you can tell.
Me too.
Yeah, I just really see an answer here to some difficult problems that Firebase and Supabase have not really been able to solve for me. And we
Yeah.
don't quite have the answers yet, but man, they're getting close. They're getting close. And what I'm hoping is that Ghani continues focusing on the core. He's really, I'll tell you, he's good at a lot of things. One thing he's really good at, though, is not letting in stuff that isn't core, right?
Yeah.
Like, people
He's got
want
good
it to do
discernment.
this. Yeah, they want, like, where he's been the most generous about that is, if you want to add a new OAuth provider, cool, send me a pull request. But
Yeah.
if you try to, send some modification so that Pocketbase works better for your little situation, he's not going to take that stuff. And
Yeah.
that is, I think, really strong in the end. So I hope he just keeps focusing on developing the core. And
Yeah.
there have been like a few, I can't even think of what they are, but there have been a few times where I've suggested, like, hey, if you added this little thing to Pocketbase, it would make PocketHost work a lot better. Because, like, for example, I don't have the ability to detect slow queries right now.
Yeah.
There's nothing in Pocketbase that will report slow queries. You might be able to solve it with a hook, but I'm not sure if the hooks even get into it in depth enough to really get those metrics. So, like, there could be like some internals like that where he might consider it, but so far, like, even that stuff he hasn't. And I think that's the right decision, in the
Yeah.
end. Like, even my ideas have been rejected, but I agree. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope he keeps working on that, and then the rest of us will keep working on the ecosystem around it. And um, yeah, I think this thing has a shot at being really important.
I think that's a good point to end it on. Cap, is there anyone who I should speak to after you? Like, anyone who I should have a chat with? Anyone else like I should get on the channel?
Yeah, I mean, well, get Ghani if you can, of course. But trying,
Garni.
yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, you know what could be fun. And I was thinking about doing this as my own, like, pocket base ish podcast. But I would be happy if you were the guy for this, because I had there's enough other stuff going on.
Yeah.
I would love to see um apps showcased, like,
Yep.
and you're totally welcome to go into the Discord and, like, ask people. I'll pin the post or whatever. But if people have apps they want to showcase, it would be cool to do, like, little mini episodes of like, hey,
Yeah.
here's that would be cool. I think what else would be cool is, if you wanted to do this at some point in the future, if you want to, like, have something where I come back on again, we could even do more of, like, a pair programming kind of thing. Or, like,
Yeah.
we could take something like hello pocket pages, like, how do we do that? What does that look like? um,
Yeah.
I think you could also cover things in the ecosystem that are tangential but very important, like Alpine JS. You could get that guy. Talk to him about what Alpine JS is, get the HTMX guy. He's out there talking to everybody. So you know those two guys are gettable, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And they would speak to an approach to web development that is very complementary to PocketBase. Because
Yeah.
PocketBase isn't it's never going to be your server side rendering. It's never going to be your SSR engine, right? Like
Right.
you can have, if you have a React app or a Svelte app, you're probably going to have Next.js or Svelte Kit, which means you're going to be running this whole separate backend server thing that you've got to deploy somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you deploy PocketBase right next to it, or maybe you're using PocketHost to manage your PocketBase stuff. So then now you've got these like two backends that, and it's just this monster thing that starts. So I don't think the future for PocketBase is going to come from that old ecosystem. I think it's going to come from these new emerging, like very slim front end kind of things like Alpine and HTMX. So I would look in those directions for some inspiration. And you were saying like you haven't had a chance to look at HTMX much. Cool. I mean, talk to the guy who made it. He'll tell you what it is and how to use it. Like way better than me, because I'm still fumbling around with it too. And I'm very much in like fighting the JSVM and trying to figure out like how do I use this JSVM API to get anything done. Like a simple database query seems to take way too many steps, like initializing. It feels very much like Go, but in JavaScript. And I want something that feels, it should be a one-liner. I just, I want to query something and get back an array of JSON objects, or just an array of simple JavaScript objects. That's like not straightforward to do in the JSVM. So I'm deep in that area trying to figure out like, how do I make this usable from a web programmer's point of view? So, somebody who just who wants to do some server-side scripting, but doesn't want to get into the weeds of like, the Golang JSVM API and all of that, but, just wants something simple like query this collection, extend it using, these other related records, give me those results back as plain JavaScript. I want my user to be able to like upload some file, right? Like uploading a file is like, how do you do that in JSVM? Like, how do you handle that? It's not straightforward to me anyway. So I'm trying to figure out that stuff more than the front end stuff. But if you talk to those front end guys, that would be cool. So yeah, those would be my three picks: Ghani, the Alpine JS guy, and the HTMX guy.